Hello everyone, this is Megneous and welcome to Spore. So there are many things to be said about Spore. First of all, I'm going to start off with the cell stage because in all honesty, this game was fun, but I believe that the cell stage is actually the stage that I enjoyed the most. So I pre-recorded this, and as you may have seen in my Megneous news, if you just jump forward to about 6 minutes and 40 seconds, you won't see any repeat footage. But I wanted to use this footage, since I recorded all of it anyway, and give you guys a Let's Play episode of Spore, the cell stage. Things about Spore. Spore was made by the company Maxis. You may remember Maxis if you're in your early or mid-20s. When you were a young child playing on the computer, you played games like Sim Farm, Sim Ant, Sim Tower, Sim Park, Sim Safari. Those games were amazing and lots of fun. However, unfortunately, Spore was an incredibly overhyped game. We expected this game to be a lot more like a real evolutionary simulator, but that didn't work out for various reasons. It was still a very successful game and it appealed a lot to casual gamers, but unfortunately, those of us who were fans of the Maxis company and all of the sim games in our younger years, a lot of us were very disappointed, and it ended up being too cute. If you look at the screen right now, you can see that my little organism, my cell, has huge, bubbly looking eyes and little flagella that don't really... It doesn't convey a real feeling of a small single-celled organism or anything like that. So, yeah, lacking in many ways. But more importantly, overall, the game was criticized for having very shallow gameplay on multiple levels. If you've played Spore before, you know that it's broken up into sections. This is the cell stage. I don't know if I'll play the later stages, like a creature stage, tribal stage, civilization, city stage, something like that, and then space age. I don't know if I'll play those. I didn't really enjoy them as much as I wanted to, and the cell stage was really fun for me, but after that, meh. But as you know, it's broken up into those, and originally this was supposed to be sort of a sim everything game, like all the different styles of games and all of the different kinds of simulation games that Maxis had put out in the past put into one sort of large sim everything. That didn't work out, and what they ended up doing was doing a jack of all trades, master of none sort of deal, where every stage is really only 20 minutes to an hour, something like that. It's not very complex, it's very shallow. I enjoyed the game, honestly, but I did play directly from the cell stage all the way to the space stage in one night after buying it on sale once on Steam. Of course, as usual, the link to the Steam page where you can buy Spore is in the details section below. So I guess I should actually tell you a bit about the cell stage. So as you can see, my character is swimming around in this goop, primordial soup, the oceans basically, fighting other organisms for food. I decided to make a carnivore for this one. You can also be an herbivore, and later in the cell stage you can also get an omnivorous mouth, so you can eat both plants and creatures. But for this playthrough I decided to go for a carnivorous creature, and you can see me chasing right now a very small, very frightened looking cell or organism. Whether these are single-celled organisms or whether they're complex multicellular organisms is really up in the air. You're never really told that much, it's not that in-depth. It's really just sort of cute characters with, you know, huge eyes and huge mouths and things like that. Some of them are not so cute, some of them are very frightening. You aren't going to see any right now in this stage, but later you will. So, right now I'm just chewing up these small creatures that are running in my wake. Nom nom nom. That is a jet. So there are parts. One of the main parts of Spore is that you can build your creature with various parts that you pick up in the world. In the cell stage there are only 6 parts, and they consist of things like flagella, eyes, mouths, and then there are things for protection, which I don't believe I have yet. But there are spikies. Spikes are just little spikes to put on your organism to protect you from mouths and other creatures if they get too close to you. Probably going to get one soon. This creature here, you see this pink one with this very long, narrow snout. There are 2 of them. These things are incredibly frightening for me personally because they move very quickly. They have the parts on the sides called cilia, and cilia give you very strong turning power as well as speed. But in the cell stage, to get these parts, you can either kill other organisms, you can jump in when other cells kill other cells and steal the part if it, like an NPC cell kills something. Ah, I died. You'll notice a lot that there are transitions that are quite quick because I've had to edit out a lot of deaths. This is normal difficulty, so I died a lot more than I was expecting, as I said in Megneous News. Right now, I have no idea how many times I died, but it's been quite a few. This is the cell editor. You can drag parts onto your creature, and what decides how many parts you can put on your character come from your DNA points, your DNA bucks, your spore bucks later in the game, down at the bottom left-hand corner. Right now I have 11, and you can drag your parts around and move them about. And as I said earlier, in the cell stage, you get these pieces by killing other cells, or possibly also by breaking open parts of meteorites that fall into the ocean. In Spore, it's assumed that life is started on the planet that you start on, coming to this planet via meteorite, or a comet, or something along those lines. So, I've been born again. Every time you go into the cell editor, you call a mate. Oh god. You call a mate, and then I assume you mate, you have an egg, and you get to basically jump through millions of years of evolution in a single minute, a single creation, alteration. It's not very realistic. Biologists have criticized this game for having evolution all wrong, and we all know that evolution doesn't really work like this, but it is, you know, a single video game. It's made for a casual audience. It's not really something that Maxis was very worried about in realism, I assume. The space stage is more realistic to an extent, but, you know, what can you do? This very large organism, actually, this is one of my favorites, because when you're very small, there's not much that you can do against it. It's huge. I just got Cilia by killing one of those pink things. There's not much you can do against the very large blue things, but later in the game, when you get larger, you can actually kill them and eat them as you grow larger by consuming food, which is also not how evolution works, but what can you do? Ah, it's gotta eat me. Run away. Run. So when you're smaller than other enemies, some enemies have weak spots, like this giant blue thing that just killed me again. Has very large eyes, and if you run into those eyes when you have spikies, then you end up injuring its eyes, and it closes its eyes, and it'll stop chasing after you for a while. But other than that, usually when things are much larger than you, you should just run for your life, swim for your life, because they're gonna eat you, and they're gonna eat you fast, and there's not much you can do about it. This porcupine-looking fish here is also, yeah, normal difficulty is much harder than I expected. So in terms of evolutionary lineages, because you can change so much in this game so quickly in the editor, you don't really get the feeling that your various iterations of your character, of your organism, are really related to one another often. Often they don't look anything alike at all. Just pointing it out while we're here, if you look in the top part of this, the cell editor, the organism editor, you can see a paintbrush. I didn't use the paintbrush in this playthrough for the cell stage, but if you click on it, you can change your color and color patterns and things like that, so you can have stripes, various other things like that. I decided not to mess with that because as it is, the cell stage took me 26 minutes, so I ended up editing out approximately 10 minutes of footage from deaths and me swimming around just looking for things to do. So, see just there, another transition. A lot of this had to be edited out. Oh, this thing off to the left, this green thing with the proboscis. The proboscis is the omnivorous mouth where you can eat both meat and plants. And the strange thing about the proboscis is that you eat plants by sucking them up through the proboscis, but you end up eating animals and meat by stabbing the proboscis into them and sucking the fluid from their bodies. It's quite disgusting, really, and you can see later in the playthrough I actually get killed by one of those 1 or 2 times, I can't remember. But yes, many deaths. In terms of strategy for the cell stage, I can't really say that there's much. Just put some spikies on your thing and give yourself some speed and you should be fine. Just swim around looking for things to eat. It's not very strategic, I'm afraid. Earlier I was talking about evolutionary lineages and how you don't really look very similar to the past or the future versions of yourself. But there are some NPCs that if you look at them, here in the cell stage for example, there's some smaller creatures like the lightning bug creatures you'll see later, and the proboscis using green organism that look fairly similar to larger versions that you see later after you grow. The lightning bug one has 3 lightning parts instead of just 1, for example, but they look pretty related, and it's quite possible that the developers Maxis, they tried to add in a little bit of real evolutionary lineages, trying to show different paths that evolution had taken in these 2 different organisms, these 2 species that are in the same family, along with the pink organisms, the ones that there's both an herbivore and a carnivore version based on the type of mouth that they use. You saw them earlier if you were paying attention to the mouths. Oh, sigh. So chaotic. I'm gonna be eaten. Oh, good lord. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot. When you get to the space stage, for example, I don't mean to criticize Spore so much. It is a fun game. It's very interesting, but there's just too much that breaks the realism that I was hoping for in Spore. Suspending your disbelief becomes infinitely harder harder as you go through the game, especially when the sentient species that you've created on your planet, if you travel to enough other planets, you'll find that indeed your species can be found on other planets, and you wonder, how did this happen? And at some points in the game you'll notice aliens coming to visit your planet, because that sort of thing happens. You visit other planets in the space stage, other aliens visit your planet when you're in the creature stage. So it's possible maybe that some of your kind were abducted and then moved to another planet where they thrived and became this wonderful other sentient race that really should be different unless they were abducted quite recently. But the game isn't that in-depth. It's not going to go into that. It's not going to do that for you. So if you're hoping to see something like one of your kind were abducted and you're hoping to see a subspecies of your own kind on another planet, stuff like that isn't going to happen. In fact, I really wish that things like that did, but it just doesn't happen in Spore as far as I'm aware. And I've played this game for what, 12, 15 hours, something like that, and I've still yet to see something like that. I have seen several sentient species that are the same on multiple planets. They're in various stages of the game, like the civilization stage or the tribal stage, things like that. There's not much you can do. Just enjoy the game for what it is. Enjoy each level. Basically, in terms of playability, I would rank them. I would say that the first playable stage is the cell stage. I love the cell stage. Then comes the space stage because it's open-ended. It's a sandbox. You can enjoy it, do whatever you want, and fly around. You can take over other planets by economy or by destroying them all, which I found combat to be quite clunky and not very fun, very difficult also. Even on easy difficulty I was getting owned. I'm not wonderful at Spore or anything like that, but you can take over planets economically by opening a trade route and over time, but the cost of planets, at least during my time in the space stage, seemed very prohibitive. It was incredibly expensive, and I wasn't about to save up that money just to take over a comrade's planet or anything like that. Focusing back on the cell stage that we're doing right now, you can see this is basically the final level of the cell stage. You've gotten to the point where you're macroscopic, you're floating around, and there are other organism egg sacs. They look like black ovariums from Osmos, basically, and they hatch into these organisms called juniors, I believe. These juniors are the most annoying creatures in this cell stage, I believe. They're very annoying. There are many of them. They're always like 4. They're always trying to nibble on you. Ugh. But once you grow larger, they become a food source. They're so annoying. But you're macroscopic at this point. You can see shells. And in the background, if you look, you can always see things to come. You see these larger organisms that once you become larger, they come into the foreground and you actually fight against them. Or in my case, as I'm running right now, run away from 2 of them at once with, what, 5 mouths? Ugh. That's one of the disappointing things from the cell stage for me personally, is that you see all of these insane the beach is in the background now, the shore, we're getting there, we're almost to the creature stage. But you see these insane looking creatures with many mouths and many parts, but as an organism yourself, even when you get up to 30 DNA points as I have right now, you still can't get enough DNA points to cover your character. You can't become the largest, the biggest. You are essentially forced to move on to the next quote-unquote stage of evolution, implying that evolution has a goal. The goal of evolution is to become sentient, to move on to land. But that's not how evolution works at all. You know, even today we have bacteria. Even today we have protists all over the place. Even today we have all sorts of various levels of intelligence in animals, different levels of organization. Biology and evolution doesn't work like that, but Spore decided not to do anything like that. Spore decided to go into the sort of linear evolution where you start off as a very simple organism, you become more complex, you begin building cities and tribes, where in reality, there's nothing that says a sentient race even has to begin building buildings, but you don't really get that option if you want to continue playing the game. You have to go into space. There's no other method. There's also really no possibility of extinction, really. You can lose the game, but there's no extinction and then take over another kind of organism, another species. As you see, we just grew what I assume is a basic central nervous system. And that's the end of the playthrough, so thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Do leave a comment down in the comments section below. If you like what you saw, give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. If any of you have any sort of advice on my audio or my video or editing tips or anything like that, ways to promote the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. So go ahead and send me a message. Let me know. If you want to do a collaboration of some sort, also send me a message. I'm looking into stuff like that. Thanks a lot for your time. Have a good day.